Hey guys, tonight we slip into the dusty sandals of Egypt's ancient pyramid builders. You're not watching from the sidelines, you're in it, right there on the hard-packed earth. The air is still cool, but the horizon glows like a coal about to catch fire. You sit up, brush grit from your face, and realize you've woken inside one of history's toughest jobs. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. But don't worry, you're only here for the night. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments, where are you tuning in from and what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. And if you are new here, welcome to Sleepless Historian, your bedtime history channel. Tonight's episode is the daily rituals of the Egyptian pyramid builders. The day begins in the workers' village just south of the Great Pyramid's base. Your reed mat crackles as you push yourself up, joints stiff from sleeping on something that feels like a woven doormat. The room smells of smoke and sweat. 20 other workers share this mud brick house with you, and it's basically a communal snore fest. You duck out through a low doorway and squint into the half-light. All around, others are stirring. The alleys are narrow, walls plastered with mud, and you hear a neighbor's goat bleating like it resents pyramid duty just as much as you do. Fires spark to life as women heat flatbread on clay ovens. You can almost taste the tang of yesterday's beer fermenting in jars. Egyptian beer, by the way, is thick, more like liquid bread than the stuff you'd buy today, and that's breakfast. Don't picture bacon and eggs. It's a hunk of bread, sometimes sweetened with dates if you're lucky, washed down with a frothy cup of that grainy beer. It sounds miserable, but here's the thing. This combo actually gives you the carbs and protein you need to drag multi-ton blocks and under the blazing sun. Historians say the daily rations could hit 4,000 calories. Basically, you're on the world's first bulking diet plan. As you chew, you notice the foreman already barking orders. They wear crisp linen kilts and carry staffs, not to hit you, at least not today, but as a symbol of rank. Scribes trail behind with rolls of papyrus, counting workers, calculating rations, and jotting down exactly how many stones you'll be hauling. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some ostraca, little shards of limestone with scribbles, show workers doodling cartoons of their bosses with oversized noses. Ancient workplace memes, basically. You down the last gulp of beer, stomach buzzing, a horn sounds. Time to move. You grab your tool, a copper chisel, or maybe just a worn wooden lever, and join the tide of bodies flowing toward the construction site. Dust rises from sandals, the chatter is loud, and you can feel anticipation mixing with dread. Some men joke, others mutter prayers to Ptah, the god of craftsmen. And deep down you can't help but wonder, why are you doing this? For Pharaoh's afterlife? For your family's ration of bread? Or just because, well, you don't really have a choice? Historians still argue whether pyramid builders were slaves or free laborers on rotation. Most evidence suggests you're not chained. You're a conscript, part of a national service that feeds and houses you in return for your sweat. Not exactly a dream internship, but better than starving in a drought year. Ahead, the Great Pyramid looms like a mountain carved by hands, its base sprawling wider than 20 football fields. Even unfinished, it dominates the horizon. As the sun rises higher, its golden disk sits perfectly above the peak, and for a moment you almost feel proud. Almost. Then someone shoves you from behind and you stumble forward, reality returning in a cloud of dust and sweat. Your day has only just begun, and already you sense that every breath, every ache, every grain of sand in your mouth is part of something enormous. You can't quit. You march on, pulled by the tide of workers toward history's most stubborn monument. The sun climbs fast, and you're already sweating before you've even touched a stone. You march with the other workers toward the quarry pits, just southeast of the pyramid base. The ground here feels alive, vibrating with shouts, hammering, and the scrape of stone against stone. This is where blocks the size of cars are born. You grip a copper chisel, its edge already dull from yesterday's shift, and line it against a vein in the limestone. Beside you, another man hefts a dole-right pounder, basically a massive round hammerstone. He raises it high, brings it down, and sparks leap like tiny stars. Over and over, the pounding continues, a rhythm, a drumbeat of human persistence. Your arms ache just watching him. And here's a wild fact. Archaeologists have found those dolerite pounders still scattered around quarries, thousands of them, as if the workers just dropped them and walked away after centuries of exhaustion. Imagine that 3,000 years later, and the tools are still lying there like your dad's unfinished garage project. The heat rises, bouncing off pale stone until your eyes sting. Dust coats your tongue, turning your breath into a cough. You lean on your chisel, take a gulp from your leather water skin. Though let's be honest, it's beer again. Water alone was risky, beer was safer. So, yes, you're slightly tipsy while carving out eternity. A block finally cracks free. Cheers ripple through the crew and ropes are slung around it. This chunk of limestone is your baby now, and getting it to the pyramid will take the patience of saints and the muscles of oxen. Wooden sleds are dragged over the sand, while gangs of workers line up on ropes, barefoot heels digging in. One man splashes water ahead, soaking the sand to reduce friction. For years, scholars scratched their heads wondering how Egyptians moved blocks so smoothly, until modern experiments proved that damp sand really does cut the drag in half. You heave, groan, and pull with 100 others. Sweat runs down your spine like molten wax. The rope fibers bite into your palms, leaving angry welts. Still, the stone budges, inch by stubborn inch. You slip once, face first in the sand, and someone behind you laughs. Not malicious, just tired humor, because if you don't laugh, you cry. Off to the side, overseers watch with sharp eyes. If your team falters, they're quick with a shout, quicker with a tally mark against your squad's record. Yet it's not all punishment. On good days, rations get bumped, an extra hunk of fish, maybe onions, which were practically the ancient Egyptian equivalent of Gatorade. Workers carve graffiti thanking the gods for onions. Imagine clocking out of a 12-hour shift and writing, "Blessed be the onion," on a wall. Historians still argue whether blocks for the higher levels came entirely from ramps spiraling up the pyramid or from straight massive causeways. You glance up at the slope of mud brick and rubble snaking alongside the pyramid, and it seems endless. Whichever method it was, you know one thing for sure: it means more pulling, more dragging, more blisters. By midday, the block is finally at the base of the pyramid. Men with bronze chisels trim it, smoothing edges so it fits snug against its neighbors. Chilly, every tap echoes like a heartbeat. Dust turns the air into soup, and your throat feels like you've swallowed the desert whole. Someone hands you a strip of dried fish, salty and chewy, a miserable snack, but the protein keeps your legs from buckling. A priest passes by, muttering prayers, sprinkling water over the stones. You catch only fragments, invocations to the gods of order, of protection, of Pharaoh himself. To you, it feels like theater, but it reminds you that this isn't just construction. It's cosmic. Every block is a piece of the divine puzzle, ensuring Pharaoh's soul can climb to the stars. And here you are, sweaty, half-drunk, sunburned, helping eternity stack itself one stone at a time. By the time the sun hovers like a torch overhead, you're half convinced your skin is sizzling like meat on a grill. You wipe your brow, smear mud across your face, and force yourself to keep hauling. Because if you stop, the chain breaks. And nobody wants to be the weak link when Pharaoh's afterlife is on the line. The sun reaches its brutal peak, and the pyramid's shadow is your only mercy. You and your fellow laborers huddle there, gulping down rations. Bread so hard you could probably use it as a chisel, beer that's sour but blessedly wet, and onions, the miracle vegetable that makes your eyes sting even when you're already crying from exhaustion. You chew slowly, the crunch echoing in your skull, and let the sweat drip off your nose into the dust. This midday pause is your lifeline. Without it, you'd keel over like a sun-baked lizard. Some men lie flat on the sand, arms splayed, mouths open like beached fish. Others joke about the overseers, always quiet enough so the wrong ears don't catch it. You hear someone mutter, "If Pharaoh is truly a god, why doesn't he carry his own blocks?" The laughter is muffled, nervous. Humor is rebellion, but rebellion must be whispered. Here's a quirky detail. Records suggest workers were allotted about a gallon of beer a day. Yes, a gallon. Imagine building the greatest monument in history while basically tipsy from breakfast until sundown. You think your Monday office meetings are rough? Try hauling a 2-ton block after 6 pints. A breeze passes through, hot but still a breeze, carrying scents of sweat, fish, and dust. You wipe your hands on your linen kilt, already stiff with grime, and stretch your aching back. The chatter around you fades into the rhythmic pounding of dolerite hammerstones back at the quarry. The sound never stops. Even when you do, historians still argue whether breaks like these were formalized or if they just happened when the heat became unbearable. Maybe the overseers knew a collapsed workforce was no workforce at all. Maybe even in ancient Egypt, management realized you can't squeeze eternity out of men who faint. One of your crewmates pulls out, excited, a small amulet, a carved scarab beetle, and rubs it for luck. Another traces protective symbols in the dust, hoping the gods will spare him heat stroke. You, meanwhile, just wish for more shade and less onion breath from the guy beside you. A shout cuts through the haze. The break is over. You groan, hauling yourself upright, legs stiff, belly heavy with bread and beer. The pyramid still looms, an impossible mountain of stone. From here, it looks like you've barely made a dent. But the foreman waves his stick, and everyone staggers back to the ropes, back to the blisters, back to the grind. Your hands find the rope again, coarse fibers digging into cracked skin. Muscles protest, but the rhythm returns. Pull, step, breathe, pull. You fall back into the trance of labor, the kind that erases time. Hours blur into one another, sweat into sand, effort into eternity. Somewhere in the back of your mind, the onion chant returns, half joke, half prayer. And honestly, in this furnace, you'll take any God that listens. As the afternoon stretches on, the sun crawls west, and the worksite takes on a strange kind of rhythm. The ropes creak like groaning animals, sledges scrape over wet sand, and the men grunt in a chorus so steady it feels like a drumbeat. You're sweating through your linen, your skin caked in dust that sticks like flour paste. The only relief is that the shadows are slowly, mercifully growing longer. Your job is hauling. You plant your feet, lean forward, and pull with your whole body. The block inches along, the sledge groaning under its weight. The wet sand trick, pouring water to reduce friction, saves you from disaster. Without it, you'd still be tugging on the same stone tomorrow morning. Funny enough, it's one of those ancient hacks scientists rediscovered only recently, using physics that would make your high school teacher proud. Around you, voices rise in rough songs. They're not hymns to Pharaoh or sacred chants, just work songs, crude, half funny, half desperate. One verse mocks a foreman's enormous nose. Another praises beer as the only God who never fails. You join in, if only to keep your lungs moving in something other than painful gasps. Quarry dust lingers in the air, coating your tongue like chalk. Every swallow feels like you've just chewed a brick. Still you press on, because the overseer's eyes are everywhere. His stick taps against his palm, a soft reminder that anyone slowing down could become an example. Yet here's the twist. Archaeological evidence suggests many overseers weren't the cruel slave drivers Hollywood likes to paint. They were workers once too, now elevated, still living among you, still sweating under the same brutal sun. Historians still argue whether pyramid labor was coerced or surprisingly well compensated. Maybe the truth sits somewhere in between. And then there's the camaraderie. You and the men at your rope become more than co-workers, your survival partners. If one of you slips, the stone shifts dangerously. If one faints, the rope drags unevenly. So you yell encouragement or insults disguised as encouragement. Pull harder, you donkey. Feels a lot like, don't give up, brother. By mid-afternoon, the pyramid's face gleams in patches where polished limestone already fits snugly. You squint up at it, and for a dizzying second, it feels like the thing is alive, watching you with blank, eternal eyes. Maybe that's just the heat, or maybe that's what Pharaoh wants. A monument so massive it makes his subjects feel like ants crawling under a god's gaze. You wipe your brow, tasting salt as the sweat stings your lips. The block you've been pulling finally lurches into place, guided by men shouting directions, wedging rollers under edges, levering it with wooden poles. The thud as it lands vibrates up your legs. Another piece of eternity locked into place. You think only a few million more to go. No big deal. Your shoulders ache like they've been beaten. Your hands burn. And yet you don't stop, because here's the cruel irony. Stopping hurts worse. Once your muscles cool, once the rope slips from your palms, the pain sharpens. Better to stay in motion, to keep the agony blurred under repetition. The sun dips lower, staining the horizon copper. The songs quiet, the grunts grow slower, more ragged. Each breath feels heavy, each pull like it might be your last. But step by step, stone by stone, you drag Pharaoh's dream higher. You probably won't live to see it finished, but that's not the point. The point is to be a small part of something too big to comprehend. And deep down, though you'd never admit it, you feel a strange pride. You're leaving a fingerprint on eternity hidden in sweat stains and rope burns. The sun is finally sliding toward the horizon, bleeding gold and red across the desert sky. The overseer's voice, sharp all day like a whip crack, grows softer, almost merciful. Enough, he calls. And the rope is dropped from your blistered hands. For a moment, you just stand there, flexing stiff fingers that don't quite want to uncurl. The sledge sits still, the block secure, and you feel a tremor of relief ripple through the crew. Work is done, at least for today. But the ritual of the evening isn't about celebration, it's about survival. You shuffle back toward the workers' village, your feet dragging through sand that still radiates heat like coals in a dying fire. Every step feels like you're walking across the mouth of a furnace. The village is a low sprawl of mud brick houses, neat rows like someone dropped a child's toy blocks and decided to leave them there. Inside those walls, smoke, laughter, smells of stewing onions, lentils, and fish pulled from the Nile. It's not glamorous, but after a day of hauling stone heavier than a herd of oxen, even watery stew tastes like a feast. You duck inside a house, squat on woven mats with your workmates, and tear bread that's flat and chewy, baked hours ago in dome-shaped ovens. Beer, yes again, is ladled into clay mugs, thick and cloudy, but so beloved it makes everyone loosen their shoulders. Archaeologists say the beer was actually loaded with calories and nutrients, so it wasn't just for fun. It was your dinner disguised as a buzz. Someone cracks a joke about a priest who slipped in goat dung. The whole room erupts, laughter bouncing off the mud brick like you've all forgotten the day's aches. You join in even though your ribs hurt from laughing and from labor. It's worth it. In this moment, it feels like you're part of something beyond survival. You're part of a tribe, a brotherhood. Outside, kids run barefoot, kicking at sticks, their laughter a lighter echo of your own. Women tend fires, shaping bread, stirring pots. Dogs scavenge along the alleys, tails wagging hopefully. The smell of smoke and spice clings to your hair and clothes, and as the stars begin to peek over the desert, you realize just how small you are under this enormous sky. Historians still argue whether pyramid workers live luxurious compared to common peasants, or if this city of builders was just slightly better organized misery. Archaeological digs at places like Deir el-Medina suggest some houses had plastered walls, even painted decorations, hinting at lives richer than mere survival. But no matter how nice the walls, they couldn't soften the blistering grind of the workday. Later, as darkness settles fully, you sit outside with your mug, legs stretched, sore muscles buzzing like they're still pulling rope. The desert air cools at last, brushing over your skin like a balm. The stars are ridiculous, so bright they seem close enough to snatch. You think about Pharaoh, about the promise of eternity carved in stone. You wonder if, when the pyramid is done, he'll even know your name. Probably not. But maybe the gods will. And maybe that's enough. Before sleep, you roll onto a mat stuffed with reeds. The walls creak, the night insects hum, and faintly somewhere a donkey brays like it's laughing at you. You close your eyes, torn between bone-deep exhaustion and the strange comfort of routine. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after, and the day after that. But tonight you surrender to dreams, dreams of cool rivers, endless feasts, and maybe, just maybe, a life without ropes and stone. You wake before the sun even thinks about rising. The air is cold enough to sting your nose, and for a second you wonder if the Nile itself has stolen all the warmth from the night. A cough echoes from the corner of the mud brick house, then another. The sound is everywhere. Coughs, sniffs, groans. The morning orchestra of a worker's village. You sit up, stretch sore shoulders, and immediately regret it. Every muscle burns like it wants to stage a protest, but there's no time for complaints. Breakfast is waiting, if you can call it that. A chunk of bread hard as stone, softened by dipping into a clay bowls of lentil stew left over from last night. Someone jokes that the bread could double as a hammer, and you laugh, though your teeth aren't so sure. And of course, beer. Always beer. Cloudy, thick, more like liquid bread than drink. It fills your stomach, dulls the sharp edge of hunger, and gives you just enough fuel to get moving again. Archaeologists have found vats and vats of this ancient brew in workers' towns, proof that the Egyptians basically ran on barley fuel. Forget Gatorade. This was the original sports drink. As you chew, you notice one of your friends rubbing his swollen ankle. Yesterday's slip on the ramp is worse than he admitted. He tries to stand, wobbles, and sits again. The unspoken truth, injuries mean replacement. There's no sick leave, no gentle recovery. Either you push through or someone else takes your spot, and maybe your rations too. Historians still argue whether workers were treated as valued state employees or disposable labor. But watching your friend's face, you lean towards the latter. The overseer's call pierces the quiet like a hawk's cry. It's time. You grab your tools, rope, mallet, wedge, and step outside. The chill clings for a few seconds, then vanishes as the first strip of sun spills across the desert. It paints everything gold, the sand, the river's surface, even the half-finished pyramid rising like a giant staircase to nowhere. The walk back is always strange, half camaraderie, half dread. You march with your crew, cracking jokes, and to hide the gnawing knowledge of what's ahead, someone imitates the overseer's nasal voice. Everyone chuckles. Another mimics a priest blessing a block of limestone that immediately cracks. Even you grin at that one. Humor is your armor, and you wear it proudly. As you approach the construction site, you hear the familiar soundtrack of labor, the thud of mallets, the groan of sledges, the sharp commands of foremen. Dust already coats the air, making your throat itch before the first pull. You know in a few hours you'll be drenched in sweat, lips cracked, arms screaming. But right now, in this fragile moment between meal and toil, you almost believe you can handle it. Before you bend to grab the rope, you glance at the pyramid again. Even unfinished, it's colossal, dwarfing everything in sight. The thought hits you like it does every morning. How in the world are we actually doing this? A pile of millions of stones, each the size of a small car, stacked so perfectly it might outlast the stars. The answer is simple and brutal. Because you wake before dawn, you eat your stone bread and drink your barley brew, and you march out here day after day. That's the real magic, not divine power, not Pharaoh's blessing. Just ordinary men and women forcing the impossible into existence with sheer, stubborn muscle. And with that, you bend, grab the rope, and begin again. The rope bites into your palms before the stone even budges. You lean forward, shoulder to shoulder with the rest of your team, and together you heave. At first, nothing. The block seems glued to the earth as if the desert itself refuses to let it go. Then, with a chorus of groans and a creak of rope fibers, it slides forward an inch, just an inch. But you celebrate it with a ragged laugh because you know that inch will eventually turn into meters. Dust swirls around your face, sticking to your sweaty skin, mixing with the barley beer on your breath. Your sandals slip slightly on the packed sand path, so you adjust your footing, digging in. The overseer paces alongside, whip coiled casually in his hand, like a snake waiting to strike. He doesn't even have to snap it. The thought of it is enough to keep everyone pulling in rhythm. Step by step, grunt by grunt, the block lurches forward. The wooden sled groans against the sand. Workers dash ahead with jars of water, pouring it onto the track to slick the path. For centuries, historians argued whether the Egyptians knew this trick, but experiments with sand show it works. A little moisture, and suddenly dragging a 2-ton rock is merely agonizing instead of impossible. Your muscles burn, your back screams, and the smell of sweat hangs heavy. You can almost taste the iron tangs of blood where the rope has already rubbed skin raw. You glance at your neighbor, who grins despite the pain, teeth flashing white against dust-caked skin. You grin back, because in this misery, camaraderie is the only thing that keeps you moving. After what feels like hours, the block finally reaches the ramp. The slope rises ahead like a monster daring you to climb it. Men swarm around, wedging logs beneath the sled, adjusting ropes, shouting over each other. This is where the real test begins. You brace yourself, plant your feet, and push harder than before. Halfway up, the sled jerks and nearly slips back. A cry goes up. Someone tumbles forward, scraping knees against rough limestone. The overseer snarls, barking orders. Your heart thunders in your chest. You dig in, teeth clenched, and shove with every shred of strength you have left. Slowly, painfully, the block crawls upward again, inch by inch, until finally, with a bone-rattling thud, it lands in place on the rising pyramid face. There's no cheer, no pause for admiration. Another block is waiting. Always another. Historians still argue whether ramps spiraled around the pyramid, stretched straight out for kilometers, or rose in zigzagging terraces. But whichever design it was, you know the feeling is the same. Endless, back-breaking repetition, a rhythm of sweat and stone that seems to stretch to eternity. Yet here's the strange part. Even as your body aches, there's a flicker of pride in your chest. You run your fingers briefly over the stone, warm from the sun. Someday, long after you're gone, this block will still be here. Your hands, your sweat, your very breath will linger in its surface. The Pharaoh may have commanded it, but you built it. And that thought almost makes the pain worth it. Almost. The air feels heavier as the sun climbs, and the overseer finally allows a pause. You sink down on a flat stone, chest heaving, arms trembling like reeds after a storm. Your stomach growls, and at last a small group of servants appears, balancing baskets and clay jars. The moment you see them, your mouth waters, because you already know what's inside. Bread. Not the fluffy loaves you might dream about, but dense, chewy hunks baked from barley flour. Sometimes the grit of sand sneaks into the dough, crunching between your teeth like tiny pebbles. You chew slowly, letting your jaw do most of the work, because these loaves could double as building blocks themselves. Still, hunger makes anything taste like heaven. Next comes the real prize. A jug of beer, lukewarm and cloudy, poured into a rough clay cup. Not the foamy ale of taverns centuries later, but a thick, porridge-like brew that's both food and drink. 3 liters a day, that's the ration. The Pharaoh doesn't want his builders dropping dead from thirst after all. You raise the cup, gulp it down, and feel the liquid soothe your dry throat while the buzz of fermentation warms your belly. A wedge of onion follows, sharp and pungent, stinging your nose as you bite into it. It cuts through the heaviness of bread and beer, and you lick the juice from your lips with satisfaction. Sometimes, when luck smiles, dried fish or dates appear, little luxuries that spark whispers of celebration. Today, it's just onions, but you don't complain. Complaining never fills your stomach. Around you, men tear at their food, laughing between bites, their voices hoarse from hollowing stone. One jokes that the bread is so hard it could kill a Hyksos invader if you threw it. Another suggests saving the onions to ward off demons at night. Someone else just snores already, lying flat in the sand with his loaf clutched to his chest like a pillow. Historians still debate the exact diet of pyramid workers, whether meat was a rare festival treat or a regular part of the ration. But they agree on one thing. The staples of bread and beer kept thousands alive through this endless labor. As you finish your meager feast, you stretch your back and glance toward the horizon. The pyramid looms behind you, each level demanding more stone, more sweat, more time. And in your stomach, heavy with barley and beer, you feel a mix of relief and dread. Relief that you won't faint from hunger today. Dread that in just a few minutes the overseer's call will ring out again, and you'll be dragging another block, ropes biting, muscles straining. For now, though, you savor the simple sweetness of rest. A crust of bread, a sip of beer, a moment in the shade of the stone you've just moved. It's not much, but in the life of a pyramid builder, it's everything. The break doesn't last long. You hear the familiar bark of the overseer, sharp as a whip, slicing through the hum of voices. Men groan, brush crumbs from their tunics, and haul themselves upright. You stagger to your feet, feeling the weight of barley and beer sitting like a stone in your stomach, and line up once more with your crew. The heat hasn't softened. If anything, it's crueler now, pressing down like a heavy hand. You grab the rope again, rough against your blistered palms. The block in front of you glints in the sun, a massive chunk of limestone waiting to be coaxed into place. You lean your whole body forward, shoulders straining, then, and with a synchronized shout, your team pulls. The sled jerks forward, sliding inch by inch across the sand as men with clay jars splash water in its path to cut down the friction. The ground turns to mud, sucking at your feet, but at least the sled moves. The ramps stretch endlessly upward, long wooden beams groaning under the weight. As the pyramid grows taller, so too does the effort required to haul the stones higher. You squint against the glare, tracing the line of the ramp with your eyes. It feels impossible, like dragging a mountain up another mountain. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians used yed straight ramps, zigzagging ones, or spirals wrapping around the pyramid. Standing here, sweating through your linen, you don't care which theory is right. You just know it's steep, brutal, and unforgiving. One man near you slips, his sandal catching in the mud. He tumbles to the side, the rope slipping from his hands, the block shudders threatening to slide backward. Panic flashes through the group, but you and the others dig in your heels, yelling, muscles trembling as you force the stone to stop. For a terrifying moment, you imagine being crushed, your body flattened like clay beneath this sacred monument. Then, with a guttural cry, the group steadies the block. The overseer snarls something about laziness, but you can see the fear in his eyes too. Step by step, you climb. The sun cooks your back. Sweat trickles into your eyes and your breath comes ragged. You dream of cool water, of shade, of lying flat on the sand and not moving again. But the chants of your fellow workers keep you going, rhythmic and steady, a strange music of survival. Every once in a while, a scribe passes by, reed pen in hand, tallying the blocks, muttering numbers as though each stone were a prayer. You wonder if anyone will ever write down your name, or if you'll remain forever faceless, your sweat and blood buried in the seams of the pyramid. A fringe theory whispers at the edge of your thoughts. Some say the gods themselves lend their strength, that without divine help these stones could never rise so high. You're not sure you believe it. All you know is your aching shoulders, your burning lungs, your legs trembling as you inch one block closer to eternity. At last the stone slides into its waiting space, nudged and aligned with astonishing precision. A cheer rises, ragged, tired, but triumphant. For a fleeting second you feel it too. Pride. This block, this one massive stone, now sits higher than it did this morning because you pushed it there. Someday, when the Pharaoh's body rests beneath this monument, when priests chant prayers to guide his soul to the afterlife, this block will still be here, silently holding its place. The overseer wastes no time. Another block waits, another climb, another battle with gravity. You sigh, spit into the sand, and bend to the rope again. Because no matter how much it feels like the pyramid is crushing you, you also know you're building something that will outlast the desert itself. The sun sinks a little lower, but the heat clings to you like a second skin. The air quivers above the stone, and every breath feels heavy, as though you're inhaling from an oven. Your crew finishes hauling another block into place, muscles trembling, the backs bent like reeds. You wipe your brow with the edge of your linen tunic, but the cloth is already soaked through, more sweat than fabric. And then, mercifully, the call comes. Water. You trudge down the ramp, legs wobbling, heart hammering. At the base, men with jars wait. They pour ladles of cool Nile water into clay cups, and you gulp greedily, spilling half down your chin. It tastes like life itself. A scribe hovers nearby, ticking names on a wooden tablet, making sure each worker gets his share. Nobody wants a riot over water. The overseers know well, hydration is survival. Without it, men collapse like felled trees. Already you've seen bodies carried off on stretchers, faces pale, lips cracked, their friends muttering prayers to Anubis. Historians still argue whether those men were given burials near the site or simply left up to the sands. You try not to dwell on it. You still have stones to move. Nearby, women from the workers' village bring jugs of thick beer, frothy and warm. You sip slowly, letting the grainy liquid coat your throat. It dulls the ache in your limbs, even as it clouds your thoughts. Some men drink until their speech slurs, their laughter ringing out wildly, but you know better. Too much. And you'll stumble on the ramp and end up under a stone instead of on top of it. A little boy darts between the groups, carrying a basket of dried fish. He can't be more than 7, but his eyes already carry the desert's weariness. He hands you a piece, salty and tough, and you chew slowly, grateful for even this simple bite. A quirky tidbit you've heard whispers about. Some crews rub crocodile fat on their skin, claiming it keeps them cool. You've never tried it yourself, though. You're not sure smelling like a swamp predator would make the day easier. The rest break doesn't last long. A trumpet-like horn sounds sharp and commanding, echoing across the construction site. Time to climb again. You roll your shoulders, stretch your aching arms, and fall back into line. The work feels endless. Block after block, rope after rope, chant after chant. Yet as the sun dips lower, a strange kind of rhythm takes over. The pyramid grows taller before your eyes, tier upon tier of stone stacked into the sky. You wonder what it must look like from a distance, perhaps like a stairway to the heavens, each step carved from sweat and stubbornness. Your mind drifts as you pull. Maybe this is why you're here, not for Pharaoh, not even for the gods, but for that fleeting sense that you're part of something bigger than yourself. You imagine centuries from now, travelers from lands you've never heard of, staring in awe at these stones, marveling at how they were raised. They won't know your name, but they'll know your work. And when the next jar of water passes down the line, you take it with shaking hands, whisper a quiet thanks to whoever thought to dig the canals that keep the Nile's gift flowing, and drink deeply once more. The pyramid is still far from finished, but for now, you've survived another blistering stretch of the day. The sun edges toward the horizon, softening just enough that the sand doesn't sear the soles of your feet. The air cools, though faintly, like someone cracked a tiny window in a blazing oven. The overseer calls for the final heave of the day, and you and your crew strain against the ropes one more time, dragging the last block into its notch. When the wooden sled screeches into place, a cheer ripples through the team. Not loud, not defiant, just tired voices admitting, "We did it." Now comes the part you live for, the walk back to the workers' village. Down the ramps, across the open sand, the pyramid behind you, glowing orange with the last light, you trudge like a soldier coming home. The village sprawls ahead, mud brick houses, narrow lanes, cooking fires already sending up plumes of smoke. As you step inside, the smell of lentil stew hits you first, rich and earthy, bubbling in clay pots. A woman ladles it into bowls, tossing in garlic and coriander for flavor. You sit on a low stool, scoop with a hunk of barley bread, and finally, you taste something other than dust. The bread is dense, almost rock hard, but dipped into the stew, it softens into pure comfort. You wolf it down so quickly you burn your tongue, but you don't care. Beer flows again, frothier than what you drank on the site. This batch tastes sweeter, brewed carefully by the village women who keep entire households running while the men haul stone. Some claim this beer has magical properties, that it feeds the soul as much as the stomach. Historians still argue whether the alcohol content was enough to actually intoxicate you, or if it was more like a gritty smoothie with benefits. Judging by the way your neighbor is already slurring his words, you lean toward the yes, it's intoxicating camp. Then comes some of the quirky part of the evening, entertainment. Children dash through the lanes, chasing each other with sticks, laughing even though their games kick up more dust than fun. Musicians pluck at lutes and pound small drums, turning rhythm into release. One man balances a jug on his head and makes exaggerated faces until the crowd howls with laughter. For a brief moment, it feels like the weight of the pyramid has lifted from everyone's shoulders. But even in this small joy, there are rules. Soldiers roam the streets, reminding you this village exists because of Pharaoh's will. Break the order and the punishment is swift. You've seen thieves marched out with ropes around their necks, forced to labor chained like animals. Tonight, though, the guards keep their distance, perhaps softened by the smell of stew. Your belly full, your throat soothed. You lean against the mud brick wall of your hut. The sky above is violet now, stars poking through one by one like curious eyes. A breeze wafts in from the Nile, cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of water lilies. You close your eyes and listen. The murmur of voices, the crackle of firewood, the occasional cough from a neighbor. There's talk around you, gossip carried from mouth to mouth like precious treasure. Some say Pharaoh himself inspected the site today, riding in a gilded chair, his presence so radiant the workers dropped their tools just to bow. Others whisper darker stories, a man crushed by stone, His family promised extra rations if they kept quiet. Nobody knows the truth, and maybe it doesn't matter. The village thrives on these tales, weaving tragedy and pride into the same tapestry. Before bed, you splash cool water on your face from a clay basin, washing away layers of grit. Your skin tingles, your muscles protest, but your heart settles. Tomorrow will be the same. Ropes, ramps, sweat, stone. But for now, you've won a small victory. A meal, a laugh, a breath of evening air. And as you stretch out on your mat of woven reeds, staring at the ceiling's crisscross of shadows, you think, maybe this is how empires are built, not only with stone and sweat, but with stew, with stories, and with small mercies at the end of the day. The night in the workers' village wraps itself around you like a heavy linen blanket, thick with sounds that refuse to let the desert sleep. Crickets chirp from the dry brush, donkeys bray in the distance, and somewhere a baby wails until soothed with a lullaby. You lie on your reed mat, your belly still warm from stew and beer, and for a moment you let the sounds wash over you like waves. But you're not the only one trying to rest. All around, families squeeze into mud brick homes, their walls plastered smooth, their ceilings held up by wooden beams. The air inside is stifling, so most people sleep on rooftops, spread out under the stars. You climb up, careful not to disturb your neighbor's goat, and stretch out on the flat roof. Above, the Milky Way blazes like spilled salt across black velvet. It's a view so clear, so unbroken, you almost forget the ache in your spine. Of course, sleep doesn't come easily. The day's rhythm still hums in your muscles, your body twitching, as if you're still hauling stone. You turn to your side, pressing your arm beneath your head, and hear your neighbor muttering in his sleep, probably dreaming of bread or beer. Or maybe of a day when he doesn't wake up sore. This is when the dreams begin to matter. Egyptians believe dreams are messages from the gods, tiny previews of destiny. A dream about clear water means blessing. A dream about crocodiles means danger. You once dreamed of climbing a ladder to the sky, and an old woman told you it meant fortune. You're still waiting. Historians still argue whether ordinary workers truly believe these dream books, or if they were mostly reserved for priests and scribes. But lying under the stars, you can't help but wonder. The quirky part, to ward off nightmares, some workers smear amulets with protective charms and tuck them under their mats. Others rely on scarab beetle carvings, tiny talismans said to push away evil spirits. You don't have one, so you mutter a quick prayer to Bes, the squat, ugly god of sleep and household cheer. They say his ridiculous face scares away demons. You chuckle in the dark. If that's true, Bes is overqualified. The night deepens. But the village isn't completely still. Fires burn low, glowing embers sparking like tiny constellations on earth. A couple of guards stomp past, their sandals crunching in the dirt, checking that no one is sneaking off to the Nile. The river has a pull at night, a whisper that tempts tired men to wash away their sweat. But the rules are strict. No wandering. The pyramid calls at dawn, and Pharaoh tolerates no excuses. Still, your mind drifts. You imagine slipping down to the riverbank, dipping your feet into the cool current and watching moonlight paint the water silver. You picture the crocodiles too, their jaws wide, their yellow eyes fixed on you like lanterns. That fantasy ends quickly. Eventually, your breath slows. The hum of the village softens into a single lull. You dream, or maybe you don't. Maybe it's just a twilight zone between wakefulness and rest. But you feel yourself climbing those ramps again, except the blocks are weightless, floating into place with the gesture of your hand. For once, you're not dragging stone. You're arranging stars. But then, dawn intrudes. Before the rooster even crows, a horn blasts across the village. Workers groan, stretch, scratch at their linen kilts, and prepare for another day. You roll over, reluctant, sand clinging to your skin. You mutter something unrepeatable about whoever invented horns, then swing your legs off the roof. The desert wind greets you, cooler than yesterday, but still sharp. You splash water on your face again, trying to scrape the grit of sleep from your eyes. Your back cracks, your knees protest, and you wonder if this is the day your body finally quits on you. But then you catch sight of the pyramid in the distance, its massive slope glowing with first light. The project is bigger than your aches, bigger than your dreams. And so, once again, you step into line. Another day awaits another chance to build eternity with your own two hands. Morning comes with a slap of heat, even before the sun fully peaks above the horizon. You shuffle into line with the other workers, your stomach filled with a quick bite, just a hunk of bread and some watered beer to keep the dizziness at bay. The foreman is already barking orders, his voice sharp enough to cut through the fog in your brain. You sigh. So much for easing into the day. As you march toward the worksite, dust already rising from 100 sandals, the pyramid looms larger with each step. It's no longer just a silhouette in dawn's light. It's a mountain of stone, and every block whispers, "You're not done yet." The ramps snake upward like enormous ribbons of mud brick, crawling toward the sky. Some say the gods themselves guide the design. Historians still argue whether these ramps spiraled around the pyramid or stretched in one colossal line. You don't really care, as long as they don't collapse under your feet. The day's rhythm begins almost immediately. Teams split off, ropes are unfurled, sleds groan against the ground. You grab hold of your rope with familiar hands, palms calloused and ridged like the surface of old papyrus. The first pull is always the hardest. A block of limestone sits before you, absurdly massive, and weighing more than a dozen donkeys. You lean forward, dig your heels into the sand, and drag, and drag, and drag. Sweat beads on your forehead before the sun even clears the horizon. It drips into your eyes, stings, blinds you. You spit a curse and keep pulling. The block inches forward like a stubborn child refusing to move. Beside you, men grunt and groan, voices blending into a strange music of labor. One man jokes about being replaced by oxen. Another says he wishes for oxen thighs, just to survive the day. You laugh harder than you should, maybe because if you don't, you'll cry. Here's a quirky fact. Workers sometimes poured water on the sand ahead of the sledges. It wasn't just to cool the ground. It made the sand particles stick together, reducing friction. Simple, clever, and it saved you from tearing out your shoulders. Whoever thought of that trick deserves a shrine. But even with the trick, hauling stone isn't easy. Your rope burns your hands raw. Your shoulders scream. And then comes the ramp. Pulling uphill feels like trying to drag the Nile upstream. Muscles tremble, legs shake, and more than once you wonder if you'll slide backward and be crushed under the very block you're hauling. You've seen it happen. You'd rather not end up part of the pyramid in that way. By midday, the sun is an executioner. It hangs above, relentless, turning your sweat into salt crust. Every breath tastes like dust and heat. A boy runs by with jars of beer, sloshing liquid over the rim, shouting for the thirsty. You gulp it down, warm and sour, but it feels like life trickling back into your throat. Then the foreman orders a break. You flop down on the sand, your back pressed to the warm ground. The block you just hauled sits above you on the ramp, waiting to be maneuvered into place. You stare at it like an enemy you've temporarily outrun. And then your gaze drifts upward. The pyramid rises above, not yet finished. Its edges jagged with scaffolding and half-placed stones. But still, it's astonishing. You can almost see what it will look like when it's done. Smooth, shining with polished limestone, a beacon for miles. For a second, the pain in your muscles fades, replaced by awe. You're not just moving rocks, you're part of something eternal. Historians still argue whether workers felt pride or simply endured the labor out of necessity, maybe both. You know the pyramid will stand long after your name is forgotten, long after your bones return to sand. That thought is terrifying and strangely comforting. Your break ends too soon. The horn blares again, and you heave yourself up. Another block waits, another rope, another climb up the ramp. You sigh, mutter a quick joke about wishing Pharaoh would build a pyramid half the size, and grab the rope. Because this is the daily ritual. Pull, sweat, rest, repeat. And somehow, despite the pain, you keep going. The sun arcs high overhead, and the rhythm of labor becomes its own kind of trance. Pull, drag, push, curse, laugh, breathe. The minutes blur together into one endless climb up the ramps. Each block finds its place, wedged carefully with others, the pyramid's flanks growing taller, steeper, sharper. You glance down sometimes, and the workers below look like beetles scrambling across the sand. You wonder if you look just as small from above. Spoiler, yes you do. The foremen strut along the ramps, their whips tucked at their sides. They don't always use them, but their presence is enough to remind you that Pharaoh's eye is everywhere, even if it's really just a sunburnt man shouting orders. One foreman points out a misaligned block and erupts in fury. The masons rush forward with mallets and chisels, chipping, smoothing, adjusting until the line is perfect. Precision matters here. One badly placed block can ripple like a scar through the entire structure. Historians still argue whether a centralized master plan existed or if adjustments were made improvisationally as the pyramid rose. Either way, someone is making sure your sweat isn't wasted. The stone surface beneath your feet grows blistering hot. You hop from shadow to shadow, trying not to burn your soles, but there's no escaping the sun's grip. Even the ropes feel like fire, searing your palms each time you tighten your grip. A co-worker jokes that your hands will one day be smooth again in the afterlife. Nobody laughs too hard at that one, but you find small comforts. Someone smuggled figs from a nearby orchard, and you chew one slowly, savoring the burst of sweetness like a treasure. Another man hums a tune while hauling a block, and suddenly the entire rope team is chanting along, voices rising above the grunts of effort. It almost feels like a festival. If festivals came with back pain and sand, in every imaginable place. Quirky tidbit for you. Workers sometimes wore amulets around their necks or tucked into their belts, charms carved with images of gods or animals to ward off bad luck. You rub the tiny scarab someone gave you at the start of this job, hoping it's enough to keep the ramp beneath your feet solid. Hours stretch on. The sky deepens into the color of melted bronze. You pause to watch priests perform a brief ritual at the base, sprinkling water and murmuring words that drift faintly up the ramp. They say the gods bless each stage of construction. Maybe they do. Or maybe it's just a way to keep you believing this backbreaking work has a higher meaning. Then, with a final heave, your team maneuvers a block into its new home. The foreman nods approval, and the small gesture feels like a golden medal. You drop the rope, chest heaving, sweat soaking every fiber of your tunic. The block isn't yours, not really, but you can point to it and say, I helped to place that one. By late afternoon, the light begins to soften, though the heat lingers stubbornly. Shadows lengthen across the pyramid, and the desert breeze finally cools the edge of your skin. Work slows, and the ramp feels less like an enemy and more like a familiar partner in this strange dance of labor. You look out at the horizon where the Nile glitters faintly in the distance, carrying boats that drift lazily compared to your own endless exertion. Somewhere out there, farmers are watering fields, children are chasing goats, and merchants are haggling over fish. But here, at this sacred construction site, your entire world is stone, sweat, and sky. And as the day winds down, you realize something. Despite the ache in your body, despite the dust in your lungs, you've survived another day under the sun, of Pharaoh. The pyramid is one stone taller, one breath closer to completion. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. Evening rolls in with a softness you almost forgot it existed. The foreman finally waves his arm, signaling the end of work. The ropes slacken, tools clatter onto stone, and a sigh of relief drifts through the laborers like a breeze. You wipe your face with the hem of your tunic, though it does little against the layer of dust plastered to your skin. The pyramid stands taller than it did this morning, the newest row of blocks gleaming faintly in the fading sun. You squint up at it, wondering how high it will grow before you're too old to keep climbing. You shuffle down the ramp with the others, feet dragging but spirits rising. Near the base, women from nearby villages hand out leftover bread, onions, and beer. It's thin and sour, but it tastes like reward. You sit in the sand, tearing into the bread, laughing at some worker's terrible impression of the foreman. For a moment it feels like you're at a family picnic, if that picnic came with sore shoulders and a looming stone giant. Quirky tidbit for you. Ancient graffiti left behind by pyramid builders shows little doodles of animals, jokes, even insults aimed at rival work crews. You imagine someone carving a cartoon version of your team, complete with lopsided muscles and missing teeth. Thousands of years from now, archaeologists will find it and assume you were both heroic and ridiculous. Honestly, both are true. Historians still debate whether the builders were full-time specialists living in nearby barracks or seasonal workers rotating in and out from villages. Either way, your body insists on rest tonight. You stretch out on your mat, the sand beneath it surprisingly forgiving. Stars begin to bloom overhead, scattering the skies with more light than any torch could dream of. You think of home, the sound of the river, the chatter of your children, the smell of stew simmering in the clay pots. But here, lying under the vast Egyptian night, you also feel a strange pride. You are part of something eternal, something that will outlast your breath, your bones, your name, a monument that will rise so high that future generations will crane their necks and whisper, "How did they do it?" Your eyelids grow heavy, but you keep them open a little longer, watching Orion climb above the horizon. Tomorrow the work resumes. More stone, more sweat, more chance. But for now, your body sinks, your mind drifts, and the desert night holds you in its quiet embrace. And so, as you lie there beneath the endless desert stars, the clamor of the day fades into memory. The hammers are silent, the ropes are slack, the ramps stand empty. Only the whisper of sand, carried by the night breeze, moves softly across the pyramid's base. You breathe more slowly now, your chest rising and falling with a rhythm older than stone. The aches in your muscles no longer shout, they murmur, like distant waves lapping against a shore you cannot see. The pyramid looms above you, no longer demanding, no longer oppressive, just a quiet silhouette against the sky. Its edges blur in the starlight, softened by distance and by your own drowsy gaze. You let yourself imagine the structure completed, gleaming white under the sun, its tip brushing the heavens, a beacon for gods and men alike. And you, one worker among thousands, are part of a story, your effort pressed invisibly into its stones. That thought alone is enough to cradle you with a strange and calming pride. The night deepens. Conversations around the camp slow to murmurs, then fade entirely. Even the desert animals still their movements, as if honoring your rest. You close your eyes, feeling the weight of sleep approach like a gentle tide. Tomorrow will bring heat and dust and labor again. But for now, you are weightless. You are still. The world narrows to the sound of your own breath, and the stars above keeping watch. And with that, you drift slowly, peacefully, into dreams, sweet dreams.